I'm glad you brought that up because it kind of reminds me of back when I was in school, and of course this was in Chicago, but we had to learn how to write cursive. And I don't know many people these days that can even write their name in cursive. And that's something that kind of going back to the dumbing down of society, it's crazy when you think about it because so many people, now I've seen some chicken scratch that I can't read in cursive, but at least it was in cursive. At least you can, it's kind of like having, being bilingual. I can write in cursive or I can write in print. But now it's just, people can barely write in print. They can barely spell the words correctly. So, I mean, what do you think about that? I guess, as an academic yourself, just where do you think we're headed when it comes to, I guess, just keeping up with China, even keeping up with India, these countries that are, more technologically advanced in terms of their workforce? How are we going to compete with them in 10, 15 years?
Well, I think it's all related actually, and I didn't know how far, because I know I was kind of venting. I wasn't sure how far out you wanted to zoom, but what I will say is, I feel like when you talk about the language and you talk about academia, you talk about reading or learning, whatever it is, I feel like there's a divide that's being made and it's intentional. And I remember hearing, I think when my youngest child was still in school, that, we're not going to keep teaching cursive writing. Why would you stop doing that? I bet you all the boarding schools and all the college preps where, all the moneyed people are sending their kids, I bet you they're still learning cursive in those places. So I think that, I don't know if they're speaking proper English because I don't really know any personally. I just hope they're not some of the journalists that I mentioned earlier because epic fail. But, what I'm saying is, to me, this is by design. And I feel like it's a mistake because you really don't know which way the population is going to turn. And so to try and separate people based on what they know and what they've learned, I feel like could come back to bite us. I know I talk to people all the time about post-secondary education, right? And the first thing people want to say is, well, college is not for everybody. Well, define college. I never said Harvard. Yeah. I might be talking about a technology school. But the more you can learn after you've graduated high school, the more nimble you'll be depending on what happens with the economy. And that's just a fact. So, if I own a manufacturing company and I don't have enough people to make, widgets for me or whatever, then of course I'm going to look to that segment of the society and, tell them on the hush hush, hey, I don't really think you need a bachelor's degree. Why don't you just go ahead and learn how to make these widgets for me so I can keep making my billions or whatever? I think that's kind of selfish, honestly. Yeah. And I think that too is going to come back and bite us. And then I guess the last thing I'll say about that is, I remember, you mentioned Chicago. I remember when there was a time where the trade unions only wanted to have certain apprentices that looked like them. Mm-hmm. And that went on for decades. Yeah. And what that did was push out a lot of people who, did work with their hands and everything and could have been making amazing money, but they weren't able to do that because they weren't able to apprentice because the trade unions were not having them. Yeah. Well, fast forward to, I say, the 2020s, for example. People are out with big old sticks, beating bushes and everything, trying to get people. They don't care what you look like. They don't care if you're male or female. They don't care your ethnicity. They need workers to come through these apprenticeship programs. Who would have thought that? Right. So I feel like, instead of always being selfish and being like, me, what's in it for me? I think we really need to embrace all of us as we, not just we're we because my parents were millionaires or we're we because we own this company or whatever. Mm-hmm. I think it's a mistake. I think it's going to come back to bite us as a society.
Yeah. And I'm glad you touched on that because it's so much bigger than that because it's not even just when it comes to the workforce, but just, I think the world in general, even as countries see other countries, but even at home, how certain people see other people. And I'm thinking about the Trump tariffs, and I'm not going off topic here, but it's all related. People are like, we don't need to do this with China. We can do everything at home. But if China doesn't want to do business with us, the goods and services that we're importing over there or exporting over there now, there's a market for that. That is creating jobs. And people want to act like, same thing with Mexico, that we don't need these countries. We can do everything ourselves. That's kind of the reason that all of these trade agreements and these ports and all these things have been created, is because we do need each other. And it's the same thing at home. You can't be a billionaire and not, if you don't have anybody working for you to clean your floors and to make sure your car is detailed and to make sure that they're flying your private jet for you, eventually you're going to have to do everything yourself. And then it won't matter if you're a billionaire or if you have no money. It's going to depend on how well can you take care of yourself. You know what I mean?
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. I feel like we've almost come full circle from what we started talking about, because if you think about it, you're still talking about the difference between being informed and being misinformed. The difference between thinking about here and now and thinking about the future.